Reciprocal tariffs is a very simple idea. President Trump calls it a beautiful idea, where he says that I will look at what tariffs India is imposing on US products and I will impose the same amount of tariffs on them. Over the last 20, 30 years, China has sort of leapfrogged over all other developing countries. It has actually become a competitor to the US. So maybe for China, it may apply this logic, but it may not apply necessarily to all the other developing economies, including perhaps India. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Express Economist. And today we will talk about US President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs and the impact that they are likely to have on India. As many of you must have read in the Indian Express, that India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has signed a lot of deals with the US government. These deals are about extending our trade with the US in the coming years, doubling it, really making it massive. But the trigger for these deals is not just a natural tendency that we wanted greater deals with the US. It is something called reciprocal tariffs that US President Trump has actually unveiled on Thursday, overnight, in fact, for us. And it is very important to understand what are these reciprocal tariffs, what do they mean, how are they calculated, and how are they impacting now the rest of the world, including India. So the first thing to understand is that, typically tariffs are a negative feature of international trade. When you put tariff, you put a tax on the goods that are coming into your country. This tax is typically paid by the domestic consumer. So you are actually taxing your own people. But President Donald Trump seems to think that this is a way to actually get money from the rest of the world. And he has been actually making a big deal about the fact that US runs a lot of trade deficit, with the rest of the world, with many countries, including India. Now, a trade deficit essentially is the difference between the value of exports and the value of imports. So if US is running a trade deficit with India, it basically means that India is exporting far more stuff to US and US is exporting far lesser stuff to India. And so, in a manner of speaking, money is flowing out of US. And with money, also jobs in a manner of speaking, because Indians are making things in India and then sending it to US. Now, US, as the world's biggest economy, is running a trade deficit with the rest of the world, almost running up to $1 trillion. And its chief competitor, China, which is the second biggest economy, is actually having a trade surplus of $1 trillion with the rest of the world. So it is a case where US feels very threatened by the fact that it has somewhere lost out in the trade world. It is no longer the engine for producing goods. China is the engine for producing goods. So one of the stated goals of President Trump in the run-up to the presidential election was that he will tariff the rest of the world, put tariffs to the rest of the world, and force them to come to US and produce goods in the US. Now, typically, when a tariff is put, either the price can go up and the domestic consumer, will pay for it, or else you could tell the foreign producer, say a car manufacturer in India or in Germany, to come and make a factory in the US and sell the cars from within US. By doing that, you then create jobs for your economy, for the US economy, and your money does not go out because the cars are made within the country. There is no deficit. Now, President Trump has declared something called reciprocal tariffs on Thursday. And these are different from typical tariffs that one thinks about in the WTO terms, the World Trade Organization terms. Over the last 70, 75 years, broadly a century, there has been a great consensus amongst economists and policymakers across the world that free trade or freer trade is better. Lower tariffs are better because everybody wins in such a scenario. Consumers of every country are able to sort of enjoy the fruits of different products across the world at cheaper prices because there are lesser tariffs. And in the WTO system, there was a notion that developing countries will not have to cut down their tariffs terribly because there was a recognition that uh, poorer countries, developing countries such as India or even China for that matter, are they do not have the strength to sort of compete on a even keel with the developed countries. And so over the last few decades in which WTO created all these rules and tariffs, it gave certain carve outs to developing countries. In such a case, countries like the US or developed countries had much lower tariffs. Countries like India or China had much higher tariffs, or Brazil. And this was justified on the count that they are weak economies, developing economies. Now, reciprocal tariffs is a very simple idea. President Trump calls it a beautiful idea, where he says that I will look at what tariffs India is imposing on US products and I will impose the same amount of tariffs on them. So this is on the face of it fair, but it was not fair or not considered fair in the previous system in WTO, because at that time it was considered that, well, Indian farmers are not as competent as the US farmers, and so Indian farmers should be protected by tariffs. Otherwise, the US farmers, who are richer, more efficient, have more resources to produce in a big manner, will flood the Indian markets. So similar examples. Now, in that system, the differentiated tariffs were considered fair. In Mr. Trump's worldview, an equal reciprocal tariff is the fair virtue. Now, you must understand that maybe a China might be over the last 20, 30 years, China has sort of leapfrogged over all other developing countries. It has actually become a competitor to the US. So maybe for China it may apply this logic, but it may not apply necessarily to all the other developing economies, including perhaps India. And what reciprocal tariffs that were announced yesterday, they'll take their time to come out with the details of it, is that they will force countries to trade with US, in particular to buy products from US. So uh, either the US essentially wants either you to buy their products so that the trade deficit is bridged, or else go there and set up shop. And that is the context in which you have to read what is happening when we hear that India is now going to buy defense equipment, India is now going to buy energy in terms of gas or oil from the US. So India was getting a fair amount of energy maybe from Russia at maybe cheaper prices, but now at one level it will have to go and buy more goods from the US because you want to bridge that gap. Otherwise they'll tariff you. And also the fact that going forward, India is likely to see US goods being sold cheaply because that is the express desire of the US president, that you have to make our products cheaper. He gave a specific example of Harley Davidson motorcycles, and he said that India is at the top of the list in terms of countries which have put very high tariffs against US. And he said that US companies are unable to sell because of the high tariffs. So as things go forward from here, we'll see more and more evidence of India, in a manner of speaking, being forced to frankly buy more from the US. At one level, this is not such a bad thing because US is the biggest economy, and a country like India can benefit immensely from uh, going along with the US momentum. It is the richest purchasing power, in terms of purchasing power, one of the richest countries. So there's lots to gain there for India. And if we can set our domestic house in order, we can sell a lot of products there, um, provided we also buy from the US. There is also an element here that uh, uh, we just recently in the budget, the finance minister had come out with a 1 lakh crore worth of tax exemptions. The relief that they had the government had given, and the hope was that Indians will consume this, use this money to consume more, and that will give a fillip to the domestic growth, to GDP. But most of these tax breaks came for people who are richer, earning at least 5 or 6 times more than the average income. And so there was always a fear that how much would this money be used to buy imports? Now, with possibly US goods becoming cheaper in the future, there is a chance that more and more money will flow out of the country of this boost consumption, which was supposed to give a consumption boost to the domestic economy. This money may actually flow out of the country to the US, because Indians might be buying more of that. So that is one corollary to the decision. And also we have to keep in mind that US under President Trump has been treating its allies and its enemies almost alike in terms of this trade pressure. So their first calls were against Canada and Mexico, which are long-standing allies and trade partners. On Europe also, President Trump has been very stringent, and similar reciprocal tariffs are likely to come their way. So one also has to temper the expectations of how US treats its allies, because by evidence, US is no longer perhaps playing the game where it's treating its allies in a more genteel manner, in a more kind manner. So that sets a context to what is happening right now. The increased trade with US has to be seen in the context of what President Donald Trump is right now almost bullying or arm twisting countries to do. India was supposed to be the first one, because Prime Minister Modi was going there, to be the first one to deal with this situation. And by the looks of it, this whole notion that we'll be buying more from US is part of that whole uh, move to bridge the trade deficits that US has with the other countries like India. Um, Keep watching the Indian Express for similar explainers. Thank you.